Hello, my name is Dante Renee, and welcome to the 10 Room Bizarro YouTube page, where I talk about films that I believe need to be talked about more. Like tonight's film, 1981's Demonoid. This is 1981's Demonoid, and this particular Blu-ray is put out by Vinegar Syndrome, a company best known for their sexploitation and adult films. Rare stuff, and this is a rare film indeed, 1981's Demonoid. This is the back of the release, and it also comes with an alternate international cut called Macabro. I believe that's how you pronounce it, or Macabra. Macabra. Now, the Demonoid release is about 79 minutes long, but the Macabra release, the international release, is about 90 minutes. I am reviewing the release Demonoid. This is the 79-minute version, the main version, Demonoid. So let's get into this film here. Never heard of this film before. Seems like a pretty rare movie in the horror genre. It does include Stuart Whitman, and I just mostly, I know he's an actor that's in a lot of things, but I mostly know him for Tobe Hooper's Eaten Alive. I just always think of him like that. This particular film is quite the anomaly, quite an interesting film. It's essentially a film dealing with the occult in a very monstrous type of creature, type of Jason Goes to Hell from the Friday the 13th series. Almost John Carpenter's The Thing in a way, also. Mixing those concepts and pieces of story together. I just gave you a couple random things there. And essentially, we have a husband and wife, and the husband is doing some mining in, I believe, Mexico, and there's supposedly something going on in the mines, a curse of some sort. And as the movie goes on, this curse impacts not just the mines, but possibly the world around them, including the Sands Casino. So let's get into Demonoid. This is a very unique entry in the occult genre, I would say. It's not your typical occult genre film. It's not your typical possession film. It's not your typical demon film. And with a title like Demonoid, we know that we're getting involved with something here on the evil spectrum. So let's get into the film, and we're going to start first and foremost with the music of the movie. Wow, wow, wow. This movie is just about wall-to-wall music, wall-to-wall score. And the score is really quite encompassing, quite effective. We have some 70s drama sounding score in the film. Or like some 70s score that would remind you of some horror films like Scream. I believe that was from the early 80s or something, or Blood Beach, or like that kind of sounding 70s dramatic sections of the score, or even like Humanoids from the Deep, or something like that. And then we have some 70s exploitation groovy sounding score in here. We also have a little bit of disco, and we also mostly will have some mysterious, dark, orchestrated, synthesized, and electric guitar sounds within the score. The electric guitar in the score was really quite unexpected and unique in the makeup of the score, because you're just not expecting a couple electric guitar cues in the score, so it made it really unique. But we have some really good 70s atmospheric horror, mysterious, dark, thrilling type of score throughout the film, and a couple sections of the score that are just bordering bizarre and and kind of ritualistic, and you can hear it in the menu screen with voices. Now, in terms of the style of this. Now, I want to say one more thing about the music. We're using orchestration, we're using synthesizers, we're using kind of synthesized piano types, weird sounds, and the guitar. But when we look at the style of the film, there's some very interesting subtle things happening in this movie. We have very interesting ways of telling the story. We have flashes in the film of horrific past figures that are in the present. We have some very effective, quick cuts of horrific imagery, horrific death imagery, and I don't want to get too specific, but involving dead bodies from the past, from underground. And there's one section of the film that cuts those pieces together that is quite horrific. And actually, some of those pieces will be um, kind of tied in to the movie later on as well in very creative and unique ways. Very interesting opening title sequence to the film that is using almost still frames that soon start to move, that soon start to come to life. Um, we have very interesting lighting in the movie. There is just some well done flashes and cuts. And that was something that really came out to me, and some interesting weird lighting and flashing lighting as well. This is a movie that Mexico, Las Vegas, California, even some studio work, but in the area, and it has a strong Mexico vibe to it. Las Vegas, California as well. But we spent some time in the mines. It almost reminds me a little bit of the Goonies at times in the beginning of the film, especially like this hidden room in the sand. Some really cool sequences in the mines. You don't know what to expect. And this film, the way it starts, the first like 3 or 4 minutes of the movie just punches you in the face with um, craziness. The first couple minutes of this film, as soon as you push play, you're just entering into utter craziness. And you're like, wow, what, did I just get myself into? Um, the beginning of the film is the only section of the film that has nudity and some sleaze factor with topless nudity, and torture and elements of what is to come and hooded KKK looking figures and rituals. There's a really interesting room underground of a kind of demonic, ritualistic looking room from long ago that almost reminded me of, searching out the old rooms in the movie. I know it sounds hilarious, but the Aliens movies, when they're looking at the old rooms, even in the newer Alien film Prometheus, they're looking at things that were there a long time ago that might soon come to life again, in many ways. We also have the movie really coming out of the mines, which I wasn't quite expecting, and kind of moving throughout the landscape, and impacting the world in very creative and weird ways. We have a priest in the film, we have a cop, we have a plastic surgeon who seems to be fooling around with his big-breasted nurse. Very quickly, you have to look very carefully. There's an explosion in the mines near the beginning of the film. You got to look, and you'll see a dog in the background jump, like a real dog, try to get away really quickly. Look for that. It's weird. Like the dog shouldn't have been there or something. Like what was it doing there? A small black dog. And we have some pretty gory sequences in this film. I mean, I reviewed a film on this YouTube page called The Headless Eyes, and that dealt with eyes. And in this particular film, we're definitely dealing with hands in this film, and we have some pretty. I mean, this is a low budget movie, with special effects and everything, but the special effects are actually pretty damn good with the gore effects. We have some pretty horrific sequences in the film. There's one sequence with the killing of a woman that is very disturbingly violent, and we have quite the weird climax to this movie. Violent, gory, and an unhappy ending, which is a beautiful thing, especially for a horror film. And the film is wild, it's weird, it's zany in its concepts and in what it's doing. It's wild, it's dark, it's gory, it's very, very unique in the way that it's representing the occult genre, definitely. And there's also a bit of theology in here, Christian theology, biblical theology, and some Bible verses that are being utilized actually amazingly so near the climax of the film. It was quite awesome how they used it. Um, and we have some very weird responses from all the actors in the film, and mannerisms, and the way that they're responding to things going on, and the cuts, and the way things are happening. It just has that really weird vibe to it that it's like, oh, you wouldn't expect people to respond in that particular manner. Uh, the way they're acting, or the characters, or the the vibe, the atmosphere, the budget, something. It just brings you that weirdness that you just don't get in modern movies. You understand what I'm saying? Um, and it's quite interesting. There are some sequences in this film. The ending sequence. There's a sequence in a church that is quite freaking awesome, quite badass, involving appendages, and there is some Catholic stuff in this film as well. Some things happening inside of a church. Some There's this one great scene of the lead girl in the film, lead woman in the film. She's a bit older than your typical young girl in a horror film lead. She's just running in the church, in these like kind of open corridors, like open window corridors, in this one hallway of the church. I just thought that was a great scene. It's probably midway when we get into the church sequence, and some pretty interesting, mysterious, dark stuff in the church. So this is, all around, it's a wild movie, and for fans of the the weird, low budget horror, um, occupying its own world. There's even a bit of crime in here. Um, you hold on to a character and you're not aware that you shouldn't hold on to them for too long because they might not be with you for very long. The beginning of the film really kind of misleads you because you think that you know what the movie's going to be about and you don't. Or you think you know how it's going to move and flow, but you don't, and you find that out 15-20 minutes into the film. So very, very interesting. This is Demonoid 1981. Unbelievable artwork on there. Really, really great stuff. And you know just an unbelievable ending to the movie, right to the credits, red credits. This is Demonoid. Thank you so much for watching the 10 Room Bizarre YouTube page, where I talk about films that I believe need to be talked about more, like Demonoid from 1981. Please feel free to check out all my other reviews in this YouTube page, as well as my own personal films at youtube.com/poopydiarrhea. Thank you and good night.